Good afternoon or morning if you are on the West Coast, or if you're watching this later after the recording. Welcome back to another Friendly Tech Hour. Name, of course, is Mackenzie. I am here to walk you through technology, making it simple and approachable. We start with our same phrase every single week. Modern technology and the internet is not going anywhere. So we got to make sure that we feel confident and capable around it so that we can enjoy ourselves and be secure. So if you stick with me, you watch the videos, soon you'll be able to fix all your tech issues when you're online. You'll be able to avoid headaches and you'll feel confident. That's the most important thing. So yesterday on our live stream, we talked about email, how email is like our personal PO box on the internet. And of course, we had some great tips on how to stay safe, how to send, how to receive, even how to do attachments. So if you missed that one, be sure to go back, look for Friendly Tech Help live stream number 2 about email. You can review it there. And the best part about this format, number one, if you're watching live, you can give me feedback in real time. You can tell me, Mackenzie, slow down or speed up. Why are you talking so slowly? Or can you hit that point again? And if for any reason you miss something, you can just rewind. Even during the live stream, you can go back and watch it again and get the information drilled down. Again, we talked about this yesterday. You'll hear me say it a lot. Repetition is the mother of retention. So if you don't feel confident, it's probably not because you don't know how to do something. You just haven't had enough opportunities. You haven't tried it enough. And in time, you'll be able to figure out all sorts of things. So again, before we get started, just a reminder, if you've got specific questions, you can always put them in the chat. If you have a recommendation for a video or a topic that you would like to see in the future, put it in the chat. Also, if you want one-on-one help, you can go to our website. Actually, if you go to our website right now, it's down. We'll have it up in the next day or so, hopefully. But even still, you can use the contact form. Let me know that you want to have a one-on-one session, and we will be happy to get that scheduled for you to get any of your tech questions answered. And on Mondays, I have a premium live stream that is just question and answer. Just question and answer. I don't have a topic to blab about. It's just you asking your questions, and I'm going to answer them for you. And if you don't have a question, that's okay. You can watch other people's questions and get their answers. So today we will be talking about navigating websites. This is something really important. All of us are accustomed to using websites, but sometimes we get confused, or sometimes the layout changes. We're not really sure what's going on. So it's really important that we drill down into how to navigate websites. You'll recall that on our first live stream, we set kind of a basis, an illustration that we're going to continue to use every time we talk about the internet. And that is that the internet is just like a highway, right? It's just like a highway. It's something that you can travel on. It takes you from where you are to another destination, a place that you want to be, a business, a shopping center, the post office, different things like that. So if the internet is just like a highway, well, of course, a website is just a location that highway could take you to, right? We talked about on our first live stream how this is the case. There's all sorts of shopping that you can do online. That's why we've got so many options there on the screen. That's often what we spend the bulk of our time doing on the internet, right? The websites that we visit, they're typically a place for us to shop, right? That's just one of the most common uses for websites. But there's all sorts of different things that are on the internet. There's libraries, there's entertainment, all sorts of different kinds of websites. We're not really limited, but that essentially the storefront, you could say, is the website. Some websites are really beautifully designed. We'll talk about some examples later. If you think back in the early days of the internet, maybe when you were using those AOL discs that we talked about, some of the websites were pretty chaotic. It was hard to figure out what was going on, what the information was. And so we'll look at some modern examples that kind of have a lot of those elements. But our purpose is to be able to get to any website and navigate safely. So we'll look at a lot of the common features of websites. But it is frustrating when we're on a website, we can't really figure out what we're doing. It does give you that feeling, maybe like being lost in a store. Maybe you have this memory. This is something I've got in the archives way back in my mind, and I bet you do too. If you were ever at a store with a parent, maybe your mom, you're in the checkout, and just as they start scanning your groceries, what would your mom say? Hey, could you go get this one thing that I forgot? And you start looking around and you're like, sure, mom, I'll do it. And you get lost, you get turned around, you feel that pressure. Or worse, the reverse, when your mom would say, just stay here with the cart while the person is scanning and I'll go back and get something, right? It kind of feels that way when we're online, we're on a website, and we just can't figure out what's going on. So understanding the basic elements of how websites are laid out can help us to avoid that feeling, and we'll feel confident. So if you recall, every business, of course, has an address. Therefore, every website has an address. And we talked about this in our first stream, the URL, Uniform Resource Locator. Again, you don't need to memorize that term. That is just the web address, the website's address. There's those things you see there at the bottom. So www.google.com, that whole thing is a web address. That domain, we talked about that both yesterday and in our email live stream, how important the accurate spelling is on that. We'll get into that a little bit more today as well. But you want to keep that in mind. You want an accurate URL. Spell it correctly, because if you misspell it, of course, you're going to run into a problem. You'll arrive at the wrong destination. So how do we get to a website? There is only one single way to get to any website, and it is not teleportation. We have to use a web browser. You'll recall, if our device is like the car that we drive on the highway, right? That's our phone, that's our tablet, that's our laptop, our TV, our refrigerator in some cases, right? They all are the devices that we use to navigate on the internet. Well, our web browser is much like the windshield of the vehicle that we're navigating on. And of course, we spend a good amount of time talking about this on our first live stream, but let's just hit it again, because it's really important to remember how to navigate a web browser. So we talked about these 6 elements. Number 1, which was the navigation pane. That means you can go backwards if you've made a mistake. Remember, if you've made a mistake, you really haven't. Just press back. Go back to the previous page. You're not lost. Nothing has happened. Just use the navigation on your web browser to go back. The second thing we see there is the reload button. If the page opens up and it doesn't populate what you're looking for accurately, if the images are missing or it gives you one of those error messages, you just use reload. Now, number 3, of course, was the open a new tab. Now, that is both a blessing and a curse. Let's just take a second. Let's look at a web browser for just a second. We're going to use Google Chrome for this example. So here we are on our Google Chrome, and you'll notice, I'll just throw my mouse up there. Can you see right there? Actually, let me make that a little smaller for myself. Right here, that plus sign, right? That's a cue for us. Open a new tab, right? That's what that does. So you notice we've got a new tab open. We can open another one and another one and another one. In fact, you can open up hundreds and hundreds of tabs. We had someone confess in the chat the other day. We're not going to ask them to confess today, but someone confessed to having over 120 tabs open on their web browser. That's a bit of a blessing, right? You can keep a lot of websites open for yourself, so it's easy to find them. We'll talk about a secret way to do that later. But it can also be confusing. You always want to look at the top to make sure that you are on the site that you intend to be on. So we'll look at some examples of that. So that was the number 3 on our list here. Number 4 is the address bar. That's like our GPS. That's where we type in the website that we're looking for. We want to be accurate. Of course, we've got number 5, which is our sizing for the web browser. So we can jump back to Google Chrome for just a second. I'll give you an example of this. You'll notice right now on our navigation pane, we've got our minimize line, right, which will make it disappear, but it didn't really go anywhere. You can't see it right now, but I know that it's still there at the bottom. I just look for my Google Chrome logo and it's there. I just click on it and it comes back. But also we've got the maximize, right? It's a square right now, but you'll notice if I click on it, do you see how it changed? Remember how we talked about it'll change when you click on it? So right now it's maximized. And so it gives us a different option. If we want to make it smaller, now we've got those 2 squares. It looks like we're going to make one of those cubes, right? And so this makes it smaller, right? So you see how it transforms itself when you click on it. And then lastly, of course, we've got the X, which would close it. But we don't want to do that. We want to keep it open. Those are the elements of the web browser. That is how we navigate, right? That's how we navigate around our websites. So again, keep in mind that browser is a very, very useful and important thing, extremely important. But this brings us to another point that I know everyone has been waiting, because I brought it up on the first live stream and it's finally time to talk about it. What is the difference between a website and an app? I know it's a big topic. We're going to try and make it as simple as possible. I cannot promise that it will be easy to understand this first go, but I'm going to make it as simple as possible. So I am looking for your feedback in the chat. If you notice that this is not making sense for you, or you feel that it is too complex of an explanation, just tell me. I'll try to simplify it even further. So, a website. We have established one of the key facts about a website is that you can only access it via a web browser. And we went through the list of those web browsers: Google Chrome, Firefox. If you use iPhone or any Apple product, it comes with Safari as a web browser. There's Opera, there's all these different options, but they all have those same features we just reviewed on Google Chrome, right? The navigation, the reload, the address bar, the sizing options. Every single web browser has those capabilities. That is the only way to access a website. There's no other option. And it has an address, right? Like we saw in our previous example, google.com, that is the URL, the web address. And so you use that browser to navigate yourself to that website. Now, an application is something different. You install an app on a device, right? You download it. You go to whatever the appropriate store is for the device that you're using. So if you're using a Android based device, then you would go to the Google Play Store. If you're using an Apple based device, then you would go to the I think they just call it the App Store now for Apple. If you're using an Amazon based product, of course Amazon has their own application store. So you download the application to your phone, and it works in a way that's very different than the way the website works, because the website, of course, you can go to multiple different sites all at once, but on the application you can only access that single bit of information. It's the same information that you would see on the website. For example, if, like some of you right now, you may be watching on an application, you may be on your phone, right? You may be on your TV, you may be on your laptop using an application, but you could also be watching this exact same live stream, seeing the exact same information on a website using a browser, right? Again, on your phone, on your TV or on your computer. It's just up to you. So the only difference is how you access the information. A website is accessed by means of a browser. An application is downloaded onto the device that you're using. So give me some thumbs up or some question marks in the chat. Let me know if that explanation makes sense. I know it's kind of a weird thing that they would even have both of those. There's benefits, and we'll talk about the benefits in the future, but let me know if that explanation makes sense. Okay, I'm seeing a thumbs up or two. That makes me feel good. However, if you're watching this, and this is after the live stream, you're watching it weeks or months down the road. If that's not clear to you, let me know in the comments. It's perfectly fine. I will respond to you in the comments. Or again, you can go to the website and let us know, hey, I need a deeper explanation. We also will have resources on our website where you'll be able to read these explanations at your own pace. So you'll have all those things available to you. Let's leave the website versus app conversation for just a minute, and we want to talk about a website. So I'm going to use a website for a friend of mine who is a creative professional, and she does all sorts of really interesting things, visual media. She's also a really professional baker. Baker's probably not even sufficient. She does all sorts of cool stuff. But let's take a look at her website because it's got some of the features that we want to focus on. So let's make that full screen. Very good. Okay. So this is my friend Jordan. She is really talented, like I said, baker, but she also is a really good writer. She does photography as a profession. She's also done some TED Talks. So she's got a really nice, what I like about her website is the simplicity of it. And that's really important so that we can learn the elements of a good website together. So as you can see, the URL here at the top, jordanbaileyart.com, right? If I misspelled any part of that, it's not going to bring me to this website. It's going to take me somewhere else. So let's just show how that's the case. Let's just take out one random letter and just see what happens. We took the A out. Let's see what happens. The site can't be reached, right? That is why it is so important that when we're using the address bar, we type it in accurately. It's almost like, I'm sure you've had this happen. When you put the address in your GPS and it's navigating you, it's telling you the turn by turn, you're following it, you didn't miss a single exit, everything, it's perfect, it's beautiful. You didn't even have to turn down the radio to focus anymore, right? You're just riding along perfectly. And then all of a sudden, your little icon stops and it says you've reached your destination. And you're looking around and you are not at your destination, right? That can happen. When that happens on the internet, when you think that you've put everything in to get you where you want to be, and yet you get a message like this, oftentimes this is the first culprit, is to look at what you type in. This is, I would say 90% of the time, the reason that you're not at the site that you intend to be on is because you had a misspelling. But you notice we use our navigation pane. We just click back. It took us right where we wanted to be. Now, we really want to lock in on this concept, like just focus in for just a minute. Because there's some examples of how this could really be dangerous for us. I want to give you an example that's not Jordan's website. We'll come back to our website in just a second, but I want to show you an example. So give me just one moment. I'm going to pull up an example for you that I think is relevant. Well, maybe it's not relevant in September, but it will be soon. It will be extremely relevant soon. Let's see if we can pull this up. All right, we're going to look at two examples of websites here. And it's a small difference between these two websites. Just a small spelling difference. Just a small spelling difference. But you're going to notice that it makes a very big difference on where you end up on this website. So make sure I got them both loaded here. Okay. So we talked about the importance of an accurate URL when we are online. This is so critically important when we're on the internet, and I'm going to show you a use case of what, especially those last letters, everything that comes after the dot. We call that a top level domain. Here's why that's significant. Take a look at this website. Let me switch us out to a different website here. And here we are. Now you'll notice we are on irs.gov. At the very top, you see what this says here? An official website of the U.S. government. When you go to a website that is for a government office, if it does not end in .gov, you are not on an official government website. I will repeat that again. If you are trying to access a government website, but the URL does not end in .gov, you are not on a government website. You notice it says it at the very top here, and you see they want to explain it to you. Here's how you know. Here's how you know you're on that, because it says .gov belongs to an official government organization in the United States. It also talks about this HTTPS. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But those are the signs, right? And I want to highlight a couple things about this. Number one, if a person on the internet has high integrity, meaning they are not trying to scam you, they're not trying to trick you, this is the type of information they'll provide to you. They're not going to do anything to mask who or what they are. They're going to be extremely transparent, and this is a good example. Now, in the case of the IRS, it's understandable because they want us to pay our taxes. So they are not going to make anything deceptive. They want to be super clear. However, I want you to look at something very similar. You notice irs.com. irs.com. And what does it say at the very top? The irs.com is not affiliated with any government agencies. And here's what's more, and may even earn commission for links on the site. But look, it seems so legitimate. There's information about taxes, about tax brackets, about tax debt relief, about refunds. Prepare your taxes online, it seems very legit. We know that it is not, because it is a different URL. If you are looking for a government entity, it's always going to end in .gov. Does that make sense? Give me a thumbs up if that's coming in clear for you. And this is really important because this kind of thing happens. We make these small mistakes in typing in the URL, and we land on a web page that is not where we want to be. This happens, and it's not just for our older ones. It happens to everyone. Very good. I think we got it. Some other examples of top level domain that gives us a signal about whether we're on the right site or not. For example, if you're looking for a nonprofit organization like public broadcasting, or maybe a charitable organization, it's always going to end in .org. If you're looking for a legitimate institution of education, it is going to end in .edu. Right? Those are the cues that will tell us you have arrived at the correct website. You've typed in the right thing. Very good. All right, we got some thumbs up there. So I'm feeling like we got that point. Again, if you're watching this post live stream, just let me know in the comments if anything is confusing, and I'll respond. No worries. So let's get back to checking out our websites. And we'll go back to the IRS website for just a second. It was actually a really good example, I think, of what we were looking to do. So let's just make a small adjustment here. Hold on, that's not where we want to be. Let's see if we can get where we want to be. On the IRS website, it told us the HTTPS. So usually when you're looking at a website, it'll kind of tell you like, hey, this HTTPS is something different. So we saw on the IRS website that S means security. That is extremely important. Nearly every website that is legitimate uses HTTPS. This is especially important if you're doing any sort of payment online, right? Like if you're trying to pay a bill or anything like that, you want to make sure it says HTTPS, right? That is super, super critical. All right, let's go back and talk about, well, let's just go back in time a little bit, if you don't mind, because I like the nostalgia of the conversations that we have. So here's some fun nostalgia. You guys, I want you to make a choice. We're going to choose a store to walk into. Which store should we go into? You tell me. Should we go into service merchandise or should we go into Circuit City? You tell me in the chat. I'm not going to decide. You tell me which one we're going to go into. I know that's a big choice, so take your time. These are both reputable, although now bankrupt stores. You tell me which one we should go into. All right, Circuit City looks like it's winning, guys. Sorry to the service merchandise people. If you don't remember these stores, it's probably because you are substantially younger than me. But these stores were where you would buy usually electronics. They sold electronics starting back maybe in the 80s or 70s. They were very, very popular. If there was a strip mall in your town in America, you would have one of these stores. Extremely common for us to go to these stores sometimes every weekend just to look. What was fun about this, and I'm sure you guys remember this, they always had big screen TVs. I don't know why we were so obsessed with the big screen TVs in the stores, but they'd have a TV nearly as big as the wall, and it was always like a treat to have a camera set up and you could walk by and see yourself on the big screen TV. We always loved that for some reason. Why? I don't really have an answer for why. I don't know, but it was very much a thing, and I'm sure the parents watching would agree. Let's go into Circuit City, though. Imagine we're walking into Circuit City, and instead of having like aisles with the hanging signs to let us know where things were, what if instead of that, as soon as you walked in, as soon as you passed the little security things up front, they just had everything in the store just like piled up right there. Not it's just there, right? Some of it not even unpacked, right? It's just up front in the store, unlabeled boxes just out there, and you would have to sort it through. All the TVs, all the computers, all the corded phones, all the stereo systems, those big screen TVs, they're just out there on the floor as soon as you walk in. Everything in storage, everything in the bathroom, the break room, the offices, the loading dock, the forklifts, they just, as soon as you walk in the store, it's just right there. And it's a mess. Let me ask you something. How confident would you feel to walk into that store and want to engage and want to buy something? You wouldn't. you would feel so confused and it's so chaotic. You're just like, I don't want to be in here at all. Some stuff just has to be put away. It can't be visible because it just messes with the aesthetics. It doesn't feel good to see everything that's available just out in front of us. And we do the same thing in our homes, right? We just have some things put away. Our clothes, our dishes, we just put certain things away for the aesthetics to make the home more functional. The same thing is true when it comes to websites, right? They can't put every single thing that's available on the website right there on the first screen, right? That it just wouldn't work. There's no way for us to be able to make sense of what's happening on a website if they put every single thing right there out in the open. Does that make sense? That some things have to be hidden. There's just no way that they could put it all out there. This is a really, really important concept because it's going to help us when it's time for us to look at a website. We'll be able to understand what's going on much easier if we understand that certain aspects of the website just have to be hidden. So with that in mind, let's take a look at a website again, and I'll try and bring it back for us. But we just need this clearly in mind. And the reason we need this clearly in mind is because if we are operating under the assumption that, everything that we could possibly know about the website is out in front, if we don't have that awareness that there could be information that is hidden from us, then we're going to likely make mistakes while we're online. I know the screen is black. Don't panic. We're going somewhere right now. We're going to make sense out of this. All right, let's take a look here at Jordan's page again. All right. So you notice there is some information on her page. So when you first type a URL in, you're going to land on what is called the home page. The home page. It is oriented for it to be the place where you get the information that you're looking for the rest of your experience on the website. Everything that is possible to locate on the website is not here, right? There's things that are tucked away and hidden because if it were all there, it'd just be a mess. So just remember, anytime you go to a web page, the first page you land on, it's always the home page of the website. Now, sometimes the home page changes. That's just the thing that happens. And when the people were thinking up the internet, they were coming up with the idea of websites. They had no intent to trick us. They were trying to make things very organized. So they came up with some standard things that they put on websites. And we talked about some of these in our email episode, but we'll drill in a little bit more as we look at Jordan's website as an example. So we talked about the kebab, right? The three dots, either vertically or horizontally. That's always a sign that there's more information to be found, right? So you can see on our web browser, we've got a kebab there. There's actually lots of interesting food illustrations when it comes to websites. We talked about cookies yesterday. But there's also something called a hamburger stack. A hamburger stack. So we see there's one here, these two lines, right? We click on those two lines. You see how it opens up all these other things that we can look at on the website, right? Things that weren't visible. You notice that none of that was available. We couldn't see any of those things before, even as we looked through the site. There's some really interesting things, but we couldn't see the things that were hidden behind the hamburger stack. So if you're on a website, you land on a homepage and you're like, all right, I'm definitely looking to purchase something. Think for a second. Where would that be? Where's a logical place to put that? It's going to be usually behind a kebab or it's going to be behind a hamburger stack, right? Those two things will help us to understand where we are on a website. Here's some other things, some other general components of a website. This section up here, that line across there, it includes this contact me, the hamburger stack, this little blurb, right? This is called a header. Every website has a header. No matter what kind of website it is, they all have headers. If you look at the YouTube page when we're done with the live stream, or maybe if you're on your phone, or excuse me, if you're on your computer or on your TV, just get your phone out and navigate to any website. You'll see along the top, there's always a header. Information, right? There will always be some general information, and usually there's some things to help you navigate the website. So in this case, we've got the hamburger stack, right, where it opens up all this other information. Now, what this hamburger stack opened up is called a menu. And just like a menu in a restaurant tells you what the restaurant has available for you to order, the menu on a website is very, very similar. It has a list of what you can look at on the website, right? So if it's a clothing and apparel website, it would say, you know, men's, women's, athletic wear, casual wear, business wear, etc. It will have all the things that you could see, maybe what's on sale, what's on clearance, etc., etc. Every website has a menu of this nature, and then you can use this to determine where you want to go on the website. We'll close that because we want to look at some more elements. If we go to the bottom, here's a fun thing you can do. You can use this slider on your web browser to just go all the way to the bottom of the website, because we want to look at something called the footer. Now, the footer usually has some contact information or some location information. So here, Jordan has her LinkedIn. If you want to connect with her professionally when it comes to business, or some more information about her products on her Instagram. That's what these logos are. And you'll notice, very important, as you hover over these on the bottom left, if you look at the very bottom left, it tells you where it'll take you if you click on it, right? Notice that'll take you to her LinkedIn, that to the Instagram, her name, and then her email, right? And lastly, her location. So that is what's called a footer. Usually has some sort of contact information, usually has some sort of information about the person, other ways to connect with them, other ways to connect with the company outside of their website. How are we doing? So far, so good. Is this all making sense? We've got our header. We talked about our navigation using the hamburger stack or the kebab. And now we've also talked about the footer. There's just a few other examples that we want to talk about, but are we all clear on those? Let's continue to use Jordan's site for just a minute, and then we're going to go back to irs.gov. This here, this get in touch, this is called a form, and this allows you to submit information. You notice she's got what's called a call to action right here. This phrase is called a call to action. I'd love to hear from you. Let's work, right? So she wants to hear what your name is, what your email address is, right? And what she can do for you. So that form is very common on websites of all sorts, even for shopping websites, even for educational websites. They'll have forms, or maybe you can sign up for a newsletter, or maybe you can sign up to get other information. Forms are very, very common. And in most cases, they're not going to share that information. They want to use it so that they can get in contact with you. So if you're on a website and you see a form like this, usually that's something that's pretty safe. You don't want to be, like we said yesterday, I'm not an expert, but I'm no dummy. You want to be aware that you're on a legitimate website if you're going to fill out a form. We talked about the call to action now. So between the header and the footer, we call this the main content, right? So in the case of Jordan's website, she's got some pictures. I'm going to guess these are dragon fruit macarons there. I don't know what that is. It looks like peanut butter is delicious, but we're seeing two things, right? We're seeing that she can bake and that she is a photographer and a food stylist, right? All that is being highlighted in the images here. So that's the main contact. This is all branded for her as an individual. This is the main content section. That is the main content section of a website. We're going to look at some not so good examples. We'll do a good, bad, and ugly in just a minute. Let's go back to irs.gov for a second. I just want to show some interesting things here. You'll notice they have a search bar. And that search bar is if you don't want to waste time looking around, if you just want to skip straight to the heart of things and say, I just need to print out a 1040 EZ form for my taxes, you can just type that into the search and it'll bring it right up. Most websites have some sort of search functionality. I would almost say 100% have search functionalities, especially a big and complicated website like this. And we see exactly like we talked about before, the header, right? There's a header up here. There's some navigation through here. At the very bottom, what do we see? The footer, right? With other contact mechanisms there, right? It's pretty much, it's uniform. You see the difference. A person's private business website has the same essential structure as a government website. All websites are pretty much the same. And this is exactly why knowing how they work is so critical. And there's always those little breadcrumbs, right, that tell us what to do. Here's some other examples. We talked about the hamburger stack. Here's another one. This arrow is pointing you in that direction. So if you click on it, you see how this, let's just watch all this in real time. You see this blue dot and there's a series of dots here. These are called breadcrumbs, just like Hansel and Gretel, right? It's trying to lead you somewhere. So if these four things aren't really speaking to you and you think maybe there's more information or you're just curious about what the news and announcements are, you just click that and you notice, you see how it moved? That blue dot moved every time you click. See, those are called breadcrumbs. It's giving you a sign. And if we're paying attention, usually we can spot by the breadcrumbs what to do on any website. Not just these. These sorts of ideas are universal. It's not just that this website is this way. Every website that's legitimate functions in a similar way. All right. There's a lot more we could talk about. There's lots of menus on here. You know, there's lots of links. We don't want to get bogged down in that. We've got the basics. So going on a website, it's just like going into a well-organized store, right? Everything is orderly. Everything makes sense. It's easy to find what you're looking for. And this is super important, right? It's important that we recognize that there's always a way to navigate safely and confidently. We don't have to be stressed. So let's pivot back and let's do some good and bad and ugly when it comes to websites, right? Because there's plenty of all of them. All right, let's get some good. Why not start with the good? There's plenty of bad. We should start with the good. All right, so we'll take an example of a good website. We already saw one in Jordan's website. That's an excellent example of a good website. Good websites are usually organized. They're easy to navigate. There's not anything confusing going on. They're by reputable companies. I'll give you another example of a website that I absolutely love. I've got some conflicting feelings about the brand as of late, but I absolutely love this website. It's a perfect example of not just design, but ease of use. So here's an example of a good website. This is Bon Appetit because I love to cook. I love to eat. And so, you know, if I'm feeling like I want to make something fancy, this is usually the website that I go to. But you'll see it is very easy to use. We see our header up top. We see our search bar. We see our menus here. Very easy to navigate. And when you click on it, It doesn't take you to another tab. It just shows you more information. I love that. So simple. Big images. When they want to tell you something specific, they don't put it in big, bold letters, right? This is just a title. They make it very easy to navigate. I love this website. It is so simple to use. This is an example of a really, really good website. Obviously, there's countless examples of really good ones. That's just one that I particularly enjoy personally. There's also some bad websites out there, and not that they're necessarily nefarious. That people are trying to harm you or scam you on these sites. They're just not very aesthetically pleasing, if that makes sense. They're not clean. Maybe that's the word that we're looking for. So here's an example of a website that I would say is bad. Again, nothing criminal happening on this website. It's actually from a very reputable company, upstanding people. No comment about individuals involved with this company. I just find it to be very unattractive. So this is Berkshire Hathaway's official. This is their official. So if you know Berkshire Hathaway, this is Warren Buffett, one of the wealthiest people in the world. This is his website. And literally, this is it. I know it looks like something that was made 35 years ago. I totally understand that. It's legitimate. You can see right here, just updated August 2nd, 2025. It's not that it's hard to navigate per se. It just isn't aesthetically pleasing. There's not much navigation. Everything that's on the site is like right here, right? We talked about how messy that there's no other facets to it. There's nothing designed about it. And the simplicity can be appealing, but it's just kind of a lot. I'm not a big fan of that. Maybe you like website. I don't know. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm saying this is an example of what I would call a bad website, simply because it's not designed in a way that is very easy for a user to navigate. And again, they don't have any nefarious intent when they made that website. It's just kind of ugly. Another example of a website that people find to be bad, even though it is one that is very near and dear to my heart, I love it a lot, is Wikipedia. Wikipedia is a bit chaotic. There's just text everywhere, and it's organized technically, but there's just a lot going on here. It has the elements we've talked about. It's got a header. It's got menus here. We see our kebab, right? Get some more information there. We see our hamburger stack, right? Our 3 layers. That gives us some more information there. But there's just so much text, right? And so many links, which is the purpose. It's a giant, encyclopedia. Is designed for you to bounce around and get more information. And it does give you options on how to change it. You can make the text larger or smaller. Those things are true. It's just not really aesthetically pleasing, but a great source for information. Lots of valuable stuff to learn on Wikipedia, but we're talking about the ease of navigation. We wouldn't really call that a website that's easy to navigate. Inevitably, if we're talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly, well, then some of it has to be ugly, unfortunately. And when we're talking about the ugly, like we talked about with the phishing emails yesterday, there are a lot of nefarious actors on the internet, a lot of scammers, and a lot of my mission is to help you be able to. That's something that's extremely important to me personally. However, not every single website is something nefarious, right? Sometimes it's just ugly. Sometimes it's just confusing, but we're going to look at examples of both. not just things that are harmless, but some things that are actually can be annoying, right? You just don't like them. But then also things that are legitimately dangerous. And then we'll talk about some ways to avoid these things. So let's get into the ugly of the internet. First, just some annoying things that happen. Let me move myself out of the way a little bit so you can see what I'm talking about here. So this is an example of something that happens when you're online. They insist on, having cookies, or they insist on getting some information from your computer, and you get this pop-up. You may have just wanted to read an article, and the next thing you know, they've blurred it out and they insist that you agree to share cookies with them. We're not going to get into a long discussion about what cookies are, but it's a way for them to kind of make an online profile for you, so they can, as it says there, they can customize the ads that they share with you. This is really annoying. This is one of the worst things about being on the internet, is when you get websites that do pop-ups like this. For me personally, especially for a news website, if they do things like that, I'm not even going to waste my time. I'm just going to move on to another page that doesn't do that, because it's just really frustrating. And this, usually when they give you these sorts of things, when they're talking about, oh, we will do a personalized ad for you, what they're really saying is, we're going to sell your information to companies that do advertising, and they're going to be able to show you what they want you to see in the ads. And we'll talk about how that works in a weird way in just a second. So that's one ugly thing on the internet. There's also this thing at the bottom here. I can't stand stuff like this, where they just give you, hey, take a look at my newsletter, get my ebook, give me your email address. This kind of thing is really, really irritating. It kind of messes with your online experience, even when it's a website that you care about, right? There's someone's stuff that you want to read. It can just be really irritating. You'll notice, though, at that bottom, I love that they added this, don't show this again. I love that. I love when they give me that option. If you're not going to show, don't. Please don't show me that again. Really ugly and annoying thing that they do. Next is, sometimes when you're using a mobile application, not just a website, but an application, you'll get something like this where it'll say, oh, can you take a second and rate us? I'm clearly trying to look at my boarding pass. I don't want to give you're going to get a 1-star for putting it right there. And you'll see this happen on all sorts of websites. They'll ask you for information while you're trying to navigate. Really, really frustrating. Don't let it bog you down. You can just click not now and move on. So those are some ugly, but not necessarily nefarious things. However, there is an element that can be nefarious. And our seniors are especially susceptible to this sort of thing. Perhaps you're on a website and you'll see a section like this where there's cards with titles. Oftentimes, this happens on news websites, right? So the flow is, they ask to give you for permission to collect cookies about you so they can personalize your ads. But then they very carefully mask the fact that they are showing you an ad. You see it's circled and highlighted right here. I tried to make that easy for you to see. But every time you see this sort of thing where there's 4 cards or 10 cards like this at the bottom where it says you might like, this is all ads. This is not legitimate news. This is not legitimate information. These are advertisements for other people that are on this. They're advertising on this website. But they disguise it in such a way that it looks like it's legitimate information. You see how it's described? Look at this one with the fruits and vegetables. Oh, CBS 2 says that this meal service is cheaper than groceries. It's an advertisement for a meal service, right? That's not legitimate news, but they mask it in such a way. This is one of the ugliest things to me that happens on the internet. It really bothers me. So when you're on a website and you see this you might like, in your mind, lock this in, really lock this in. Don't waste your time with this section. It's just advertisements. It's not legitimate. There's oftentimes really dangerous websites linked to these advertisements, just don't even waste your time down there. It's not where you want to be. The information you want was higher up on the website, I assure you. Yeah, just trust me on that. You don't want anything to do with that part of the website. So some general rules for being safe online, just to recap what we've talked about today. Always check that URL, make sure that it's accurate, especially if you're looking for a government business or a school, right? Make sure it ends in .gov or .edu. Really, really important that we do that. Also, make sure you see that lock on your address bar, or that it says HTTPS, so that you know the website is secure. Be sure to avoid the pop-ups, right, that say, oh, you've won something. Just ignore it. Same like we talked about in our email yesterday. Exact same concept. We don't want anything to do with that. Stick to sites that you know, right, or that are recommended to you by people that you really trust, because again, there's lots and lots of scammers out there. And again, this is my purpose, is to protect you from those nefarious people. Just stick to what you know. There's literally trillions of websites. Well, you can't visit them all, and there's no way that all of them are legitimate. And lastly, if you want to remember a website, you want to save it for yourself, just bookmark it. So let's take 10 seconds and we're going to bookmark a web page. So we'll use Jordan's website as an example. I'll show you how to do it on Google Chrome. It is very, very simple. Very, very simple. And it's always simple on any website, no matter what website you're on. At the very top, whether you're on your phone or whether you're on your computer, there's always something like a star or something that looks like a bookmark at the top right of the address bar. If you click that, it just bookmarks it, and then you just say done, and then it's saved forever. You don't have to worry about finding it in the future. You just navigate over here to bookmarks, and there they all are. All your bookmarks will be there. So that's a simple way to keep yourself safe online and to make sure that you're not getting involved in any of these scam sites that are out there. So just again, thank you to everyone. Really appreciate having you guys on the stream today. I hope you learned a lot. I hope it was at a pace that was tolerable. I really, really appreciate the feedback. Again, if you're watching this after the live stream, feel free to give me any feedback in the comments. I read every single comment. I respond to every single comment because I really, really appreciate the support. Lastly, just want to shout out real quickly our sponsors, which is absolutely no one. So I rely on you guys to help me out here. So please like this video, give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel. If anyone you know or love would benefit from this sort of content, please share it with them. It's very, very simple on YouTube. In fact, I have a video up next week explaining how to do that in a very simple way. Again, thank you guys so much for the support. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day, and we will see you not on next Tuesday, but on next Wednesday. The schedule is up for next week. We will have 2 awesome live streams next week. We'll be talking about passwords and multi-factor authentication, which I know you hate the passwords, but trust me, you're going to learn a ton on this one. You'll be happy to know what we'll have for you on Wednesday. And I won't even spoil Thursday. Just go to our YouTube channel and see what we've got coming up on Thursday. So we look forward to seeing you guys then. Enjoy the rest of the day. We'll see you next time.